I never thought I'd find myself back here, standing beneath the towering oak tree in my father's backyard. The tree, with its gnarled branches and thick, comforting shade, had witnessed so much of my childhood: the scraped knees, the whispered secrets, the laughter that once filled the air. Now, it stood as a silent sentinel to memories I wasn't sure I was ready to face. It had been years since my last visit. Life, in its relentless march forward, had pulled me away, burying me in a flurry of responsibilities and routines. But last week, a letter arrived, a carefully penned note in my father's familiar handwriting. He never was one for sentimentality, but the words carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "Come home, Lucy. There's something we need to talk about." And so here I was, gripping the letter tightly as I stood on the weathered porch steps. The creak of the wooden floorboards beneath my feet felt like an old friend greeting me with a weary sigh. My father opened the door before I could knock, his eyes a little softer than I remembered, but still holding that quiet strength. "Hey, kiddo," he said, and just like that, the years melted away. The house smelled the same, a mixture of old wood, faint tobacco, and the lingering scent of my mother's lavender perfume. It wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, stirring emotions I thought I had long buried. My father led me to the kitchen, where the worn oak table stood in the same place, a silent witness to countless family meals and heart-to-heart talks. "Sit down, Lucy. Can I get you some tea?" he asked, already reaching for the kettle. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, tea sounds good." As he busied himself with the familiar routine, I took in the small changes in the house: the new curtains, the stack of newspapers beside his armchair, the absence of my mother's knitting basket. Each detail spoke of time passing, of life moving on in ways I had failed to keep up with. Chapter 2. Conversations in the shade. We sat under the oak tree, the late afternoon sun casting dappled patterns across the ground. Dad handed me a glass of iced tea, his hands a little more worn than they used to be, but steady as ever. For a while, we just sat, the silence stretching between us like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. "You always loved this tree," he finally said, his voice thick with nostalgia. "I did," I replied, running my fingers over the rough bark. It felt safe, like it would never change. He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Things change, though." I looked at him then, seeing past the familiar lines of his face to the years etched deep within. "Is that why you asked me to come?" He sighed, setting his glass down on the grass. "There are things I never told you, Lucy. Things I should have said a long time ago." My heart clenched, the weight of unsaid words pressing heavily between us. "Like what?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph, the edges worn and frayed. It was of my mother, her smile radiant, holding me as a baby beneath this very tree. "Your mom and I, we had our struggles. And I realize now that I let those struggles build a wall between us. I should have been more open with you." I traced the image with my thumb, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "Dad, I never blamed you for anything." He shook his head. "I know. But I want you to know that I always loved you, even when I didn't show it the way I should have." The honesty in his voice broke something loose inside me, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to lean into the moment, to feel the love that had always been there, even in the silence. Over the next few days, we spent hours reminiscing about the past, the summer road trips, the rainy afternoons spent reading by the fire, and the way my mother used to hum as she cooked. Each story added another layer to my understanding of the man sitting beside me, revealing depths I had never truly appreciated before. Chapter 3. New beginnings. The days stretched on, each one filled with conversations I never thought would have. We walked the familiar parts of the old town, visited the places that had once been the backdrop of my childhood. With each step, I felt a part of myself reconnecting with the past I had long buried. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from the porch, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Lucy, I've been thinking, maybe it's time I sell the house. Move somewhere smaller." My chest tightened. "Are you sure? This place means so much to you." He smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "It does. But it's time for a new chapter. For both of us." I looked around, taking in the worn wooden beams, the creaky floorboards, and the oak tree that had been my constant. "Maybe you're right. But let's not rush it, okay?" He nodded, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Okay." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that coming back home wasn't just about reconnecting with my father. It was about rediscovering parts of myself I had long forgotten. And in the quiet moments beneath the old oak tree, I found something I hadn't known I was looking for: closure, understanding, and perhaps a new beginning. A week later, as I packed my bags to head back to the city, I made a promise to myself to visit more often, to call more frequently, and to never let the years slip away from us again. Because in the end, home wasn't just a place. It was the people we chose to hold close, and the memories we chose to cherish.